Trump travel ban.
It's working out very nicely.
The president's executive order is causing controversy across the country.
No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here.
We have reaction from Catholics in Congress. World leaders respond. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin has more on what leaders in Europe are saying. Abandoned. We'll take you to a city in Iraq once known as its Christian capital, now a ghost town. A young mother's touching story about the value of life.
I wasn't ready to have a child, but she or he had more to offer the world than just being thrown away.
Meet the daughter who nearly became the victim of abortion. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, January 30th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Donald Trump defends his executive order cracking down on immigration. He's denying his 7-country travel ban is to blame for chaos at airports across the country this week. We have team coverage. Jason Calvi will join us with fallout from Capitol Hill. Mary Shovlin has reaction from Rome. But first, Wyatt Goolsbee takes us to the White House, where President Trump is responding to critics. Wyatt.
Lauren, the president says that his temporary ban on 7 Muslim-majority countries coming to the U.S. is aimed at protecting the homeland. He says there's nothing nice about searching for terrorists before they enter the country, but his executive order is sparking protests across the nation.
Protests, court orders, and lots of confusion after President Trump suspends all immigration for citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries for 90 days. They include Iraq, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen.
Actually had a very good day yesterday in terms of homeland security.
Trump is not backing down on his order, which also prevents refugees from the same 7 countries from entering the U.S. for 120 days. In a tweet today, he says only 109 people out of 325,000 were detained and held for questioning. Big problems at airports were caused by Delta computer outage, protesters, and the tears of Senator Schumer. Secretary Kelly said that all is going well with very few problems. Make America safe again. Later, the president tried shifting the focus away, signing an executive action aimed at cutting regulations for small businesses. But many Americans still have their sights set on revoking Trump's immigration order. This man's parents are Syrians who were denied entry when they landed in Philadelphia and sent back in a flight bound for Qatar.
I haven't seen them for 3 years, so it was really hard for me to not hug them, to not be with them.
Some have compared the order to a 2011 policy. That's when President Obama imposed additional checks on Iraqi refugees after 2 Iraqis were charged with terrorism. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer defends the order.
And being able to come to America is a privilege, not a right. And it is our duty, and it is the president's goal to make sure that everybody who comes into this country, to the best of our ability, is here because they want to enjoy this country and come in peacefully.
Spicer went on to say that you can expect this president to be very proactive in protecting the country. He says you can expect to see more of that in the future without saying anything specific. He also went on to use words like safe or safety more than a dozen times. Lauren?
Wyatt, which groups have filed legal challenges against the president's ban?
Lauren, we know that the Council on American Islamic Relations as well as the Washington State Attorney General both filed lawsuits today, and that's just adding to the mounting legal challenges that have come over the weekend.
Wyatt from the White House. Wyatt Goolsbee, thank you. President Trump has reorganized the National Security Council, removing the Director of Intelligence and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as regular members of the council. Instead, Chief Strategist Steve Bannon will become a regular member, breaking from a structure that has existed for more than 20 years. Bannon advised Trump's campaign and was the former head of Breitbart News. Lawmakers are deeply divided on the order, with an increasing number of Republicans raising concerns. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi continues our team coverage tonight. Jason.
Lauren, right now Democrats are protesting outside the Supreme Court. urging the president to change course. They say the order betrays what our nation stands for. Another leader on the Hill, House Speaker Paul Ryan, who is a Catholic, supports the president's actions. But some in his party would like to see changes in the language. Most Republicans support tougher scrutiny for refugees, but they're urging the president to slow down and work with Congress.
One, it is not a ban. However, I think it was not properly vetted. So you have an extreme vetting proposal that didn't get the vetting it should have had. And as a result, in the implementation, we've seen some problems.
I think that we could have accomplished our objective, which is a good objective, of keeping our homeland safe if we had just implemented different screening methods, different vetting measures.
Senator Pat Toomey, a pro-life Catholic from Pennsylvania, supports increased vetting,
And I think that's what we're going to do.
but adds, quote, the initial executive order was flawed. It was too broad and poorly explained. Representative Mark Walker of North Carolina is a Christian minister. He's backing Trump.
I believe overall it does put a little bit extra pause to make sure that we are doing the vetting that needs to be done. It was just a year and a half ago when our DHS, Jay Johnson, as well as the FBI director said our vetting isn't quite under control where we need to be. Once we get that where I believe is a good place, then I don't have a problem continuing the refugee settlement program.
Many Democrats are vowing to fight the order.
I see it as illegal, unconstitutional, and un-American. I don't think this ban will make us any safer. I frankly think it'll be a propaganda bonanza for ISIS.
A procedural vote in the Senate tonight on Donald Trump's Secretary of State nominee sets up an extended debate on Trump's action. The executive order does allow the Secretaries of State and Homeland Security to issue visas on a case-by-case basis. Lauren?
With many members of Congress that upset, Jason, can Congress overturn this executive order?
They would need to pass a law to overturn the order, but then President Trump would likely veto it. To override the veto, 2/3 of each chamber, Senate and House, would need to vote to override the presidential veto. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer tonight is asking for a vote to undo President Trump's order.
Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Jason. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops runs the largest refugee resettlement network in the country and is speaking out about President Trump's immigration order. Bishop Vasquez of Austin, Texas, is the chairman of the Committee on Migration and said that we believe that now more than ever, welcoming newcomers and refugees is an act of love and hope. Donald Cardinal Wuerl, Archbishop of Washington, said in a statement, "The political debate, which is complex and emotionally highly charged, will continue. But we must do our best to remain focused on the pastoral and very real work we undertake every day for the vulnerable and most in need, for the strangers at our doors." Pope Francis is staying silent on President Trump's travel ban, but the Holy Father often talks about open borders. Vatican correspondent Mary Shevlin joins us from Rome. Mary, we have heard the Pope welcome migrants and refugees. It's been one of the themes of his pontificate. Why hasn't he spoken out about this travel order?
I think with the events that happened over the weekend, there's quite a media frenzy, isn't there? And I think not only is everyone hearing a lot, the faithful are hearing a lot. So I think right now for him to wait on this issue, I think he's just being a little bit cautious. But we know that he has spoken volumes, and we know very well where Pope Francis does stand on this issue.
And what has he said?
Well, we remember back to his one of the press conferences on his flight back to Italy from one of his trips abroad, and somebody asked him, what about Trump's idea to build a wall, for example? And he said, well, people that build walls aren't Christian, not specifically naming Trump. So we had that, him weighing in on the wall debate. But even most recently, earlier this month, he spoke to world diplomats accredited to the Holy See, and he praised those countries that have left their borders open, countries that have already welcomed the refugees in the thousands and sometimes even in the millions, praising them for keeping their borders open, not succumbing to fear.
How are leaders in Italy reacting to the temporary immigration ban?
Well, first of all, let me say that Italy as a country, just in the last year alone, has welcomed 180,000 migrants and refugees. This is really one of the front lines for this historic immigration crisis. In Italy, maybe because the Vatican's in its backyard, has a very open door policy and really works on integrating them. Their leaders, though, without specifically naming Trump, the prime minister did tweet out that, Europe would not, follow suit, saying these were not the pillars upon which the governments of Europe are built. So just kind of a backhanded criticism of Trump's doing this weekend, even though politicians all throughout Europe are weighing in, a little bit of shock and awe at Trump's decision.
Mary Shovlin, Vatican correspondent with EWTN News Nightly. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lauren.
British Prime Minister Theresa May's office says that a state visit to Britain by President Trump later this year will go ahead, despite increasing calls for it to be canceled over his ban. In Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel criticized the president's plan. Merkel told reporters she believes the U.S. action contradicts the basic concept of international help for refugees and international cooperation. Uber is pushing back against President Trump's immigration order. The company's CEO says the ban is against everything Uber stands for. He also promised, the leader promised, to help his drivers affected by the order, setting aside $3 million for their legal defense. Uber's competitor is also stepping up after the immigration ban. Lyft says it will donate $1 million over the next 4 years to the American Civil Liberties Union. Tech giant Google says it created a crisis fund that could raise up to $4 million for immigration rights organizations, including the ACLU. President Trump has moved up the announcement of his Supreme Court pick. He now plans to reveal his nominee tomorrow night at 8 p.m., not Thursday. Trump says the person is, quote, unbelievably highly respected. The court has had 8 justices since Antonin Scalia died last year. He was praised as a conservative Catholic who defended life. President Trump has promised to nominate someone like Scalia. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. What was supposed to be a peaceful night of evening prayers turned deadly in Quebec City after a fatal shooting in a mosque. 6 people were killed and more than a dozen were hurt. More than 50 people were in the Quebec Islamic Cultural Center last night when gunfire erupted. Police arrested 2 people, but later said only one of them is considered a suspect. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called it an act of terrorism. President Trump called Trudeau to express condolences to the Canadian people and to offer assistance. Pope Francis condemns the attack and is calling for mutual respect among all faiths. The Holy Father met with Cardinal Gerald Lacroix, the Archbishop of Quebec, at the Vatican today. The Pope's condolences were also communicated in a message. Please visit our news partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com to read more about the Holy Father's telegram. An auxiliary bishop in Newark, New Jersey is back at his residence after being attacked during Mass. Bishop Manuel Cruz was celebrating the Eucharist during an event honoring Baseball Hall of Famer Roberto Clemente. Police say Charles Miller was in a pew, got up, went to the altar, and punched the bishop in the mouth. His Excellency was treated at a hospital and released. Miller was charged with assault, the motive not clear. An ousted leader of the Catholic lay order, the Knights of Malta, is back at his post. The order's foreign minister was removed following revelations its charity wing distributed artificial contraception in Myanmar. But the Vatican intervened on the minister's behalf. On Saturday, the Knights of Malta Council scrapped the disciplinary procedures launched against the minister. The council also accepted the resignation of Grand Master Matthew Festing. Coming up, religious persecution. See the empty streets where Christians once thrived. Vatican money. Reports say Pope Francis will soon be making a change to Vatican coins. Burned down shops and destroyed churches, that's all that's left in a city once considered the Christian capital of Iraq. Hamdaniya was once home to more than 150,000 people, and half were Christians. Now, its streets are empty, its businesses are abandoned, and its churches have been demolished. Residents are demanding services and security to rebuild their homes before they consider returning to the city. The town was under the control of ISIS until October 2016. One organization that works to protect persecuted Christians in the Middle East says President Trump's travel ban is preventing them from entering the United States. And joining us now is Philippe Nassif. He's the executive director of In Defense of Christians. Nice to see you again.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Why is Donald Trump's executive order hurting persecuted Christians in your mind?
So a couple of different points. One is that the ban is a blanket ban on Syrian nationals, Iraqis, other countries from entry into the United States. There's no real distinction between an Iraqi Christian, a Syrian Christian from a Syrian Muslim.
But Donald Trump said that Christians will be given priority to enter the U.S. Isn't that enough?
Sure. So the issue is that it's very hard to determine for the people at the airports, the customs agents who are meeting with these refugees, what their religious background is. And so what's happening is we've had some families that have been turned away and sent back to Lebanon. For example, a Syrian Christian family in Philadelphia was sent back to Lebanon after they landed in the United States.
What did they say? Did they say, well, they told them that we were Christian?
So the family told the agent that they were Christian. They showed their cross. The man replied, well, you could have bought that in a market or anywhere. They were sent back to Lebanon. They're a Syrian Christian family that were seeking refuge here in the United States. We're currently trying to track them down and find them.
And why can't you track them down?
So the issue with a lot of the Christian refugees is that whenever they leave Syria, for example, and they go to a place like Lebanon, they don't go to any refugee camps because they're afraid of the more radicalized elements that exist in some of these refugee camps. And so they kind of just go missing or hiding.
And then you can't help them.
We can't help them. So they go back to Lebanon in the case of his family, and we don't know where they were before they went to the airport, flew to the United States. Now we can't find them since they've returned.
So the executive order that we've printed out here, protecting the nation from the foreign terrorist entry into the United States that Donald Trump put out, says here also that this is on page 5, section D, for those of you who want to look it up on whitehouse.gov, I hereby proclaim the entry of more than 50,000 refugees in fiscal year 2017 would be detrimental to the interests of the United States. That number is almost double right now.
Right.
What happens to those refugees who are left in the camps?
Right. So basically, a lot of these refugees are in a really bad economic situation in the camp. They're also afraid to be there, even the non-Christian refugees, because of these radicalized elements. And so what's happening is they're stuck in limbo. They don't know when the ban will be lifted. They don't know if they'll ever be allowed into the United States. It's hard to find out the religious minorities in these camps because, again, they're afraid to register even with the United Nations and show that they are trying to leave their countries to come to the United States, for example.
Do they get pressure in the camps? Is there, I mean, when I hear a refugee camp or I see it, it looks like a terrible, terrible place
Absolutely.
to be. Is there protection there, or are there radicalized Muslims in there?
So a lot of the people that are in these camps, so we're talking over 1 million people that have left Syria and gone into Lebanon, for example, which is already a tiny nation, right? They can barely handle the 4 million people that already live there and the 1 million Palestinian refugees that already live in Lebanon. So now you have an additional 1.5 million Syrians, many of them Sunni Muslim. A lot of them, especially the young men, have been traumatized. It's fertile breeding ground for radicalism. For people to go and recruit these young men to then either go back to Syria to fight or to go elsewhere. And so it's a dangerous environment for anybody to be in, especially the longer they stay there, the less hope that they have to return back home and the more radicalized people become.
So the U.S. is now saying no more than 50,000 refugees per year into the United States. You are trying to keep Christians to stay in places so that they are
Sure.
not becoming refugees, yet you're also saying
Right.
that you want these people to be able to be refugees.
Exactly. Well, we ideally don't want them to be refugees, but in the event that they've left Syria, again, using Syria as an example, and they are able to come to the United States, some of them may have relatives here, families here, communities they want to join, they should be allowed to leave, and they should be allowed to come to the United States, which is why this ban is not helpful. It's a blanket ban on nationality, and so Syrians, regardless of their religion, are not able to come to the United States because of the ban.
Okay, thank you so much, Philippe Nassif, for your viewpoint on the Trump travel ban. He's the executive director of In Defense of Christians.
Thank you very much.
Pope Francis reiterates his closeness to the victims of recent earthquakes and an avalanche in central Italy.
Che qualsiasi tipo di burocrazia non li faccia aspettare.
The Holy Father appeals to government leaders, saying he hopes victims won't have to wait for benefits. The Pope made the remarks after his weekly prayer on Sunday to about 25,000 pilgrims gathered in St. Peter's Square. Vatican money could soon take on a new look. Pope Francis reportedly wants his face taken off of Vatican euro coins. Instead, the money would just show the Holy Father's coat of arms. An Italian news agency says at least one previous pope, Paul VI, made a similar request. Up next, change of heart.
And I decided to be a parent.
I speak to a mother who chose life and is now sharing her inspiring story. Federal judge blocks a Texas law requiring aborted babies to be properly buried or cremated. The judge says the regulations would remain suspended until further notice, and a trial date would be set in the coming weeks. The law seeks to ban hospitals and clinics from treating remains from abortions or miscarriages as biological medical waste. A young mother makes a difficult decision to carry her baby to term. She says it was the best thing she ever did in her life. She joined me on Friday here on set after the March for Life with that baby, who is now 4 years old. Among the thousands of people at the March for Life was a young woman who changed her mind about having an abortion. She is joining us now. Welcome to Michaela Frazier and 4-year-old daughter Ariane. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, honey.
Hi.
Hi. Tell us, you went to have an abortion and you didn't. What happened?
We were at the consultation for the abortion, and I asked the receptionist, what do you guys do with the fetus after the procedure? And she told me that we throw the fetus in the trash.
And what did you think in your mind?
My daughter, or my unborn child, does not deserve to go in the trash because of a decision that I made. And it made me sick to my stomach. I wasn't ready to have a child, but she or he had more to offer the world than just being thrown away.
And so what did you do?
I went back to Elizabeth New Life Center. And
in Dayton?
In Dayton, Ohio, yes ma'am. And I received resources that they had to offer me, and I decided to be a parent.
And?
And I have my 4-year-old daughter here.
And aren't you lucky to be here? Did you like the march today?
And I actually liked the song.
What song was it that you liked?
Our voices getting stronger.
Voices getting stronger, Mom. How appropriate is that? Can you imagine if you had made a different decision?
I wouldn't want to imagine that. Every day I would have to think of what if. What could that child be? What could they turn out to be? Or even if the procedure, if something would have went wrong with the procedure, that could have taken my life. Or, you know, if I was ready eventually to have a child, I probably wouldn't have been able to.
You met members of Congress just here actually today and
Yes.
all day today. What did you tell them? What did you ask them to do? You have this very personal experience firsthand. What do you want to tell people, to tell other women?
I would like them to tell them and voice that there are agencies that's out there to help single parents like myself, or even a couple that may be
that can help people like you
Yes.
to make a decision to choose
life.
Life, right?
Yes.
Are you happy to be here with your mom? You are. Well, we are so happy to have you. Thank you so much, Michaela, Ariane, for coming to EWTN Studios and to talking with us about that courageous decision that you made.
Thanks for having us.
For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, you can see every broadcast of the show on EWTN's YouTube channel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, and God bless.